Raising teenagers is hard. Understatement of the century. This is Mentor Select. Mentor Select. Parenting teens to be successful adults. Mentor Select serves parents who are raising teens. Every week, Derek interviews leading experts that work with teens, educators, counselors, mentors, and authors to give you practical tips, strategies, and resources that you can incorporate immediately to better connect and understand your teen. All while parenting them to be successful adults, focusing on social and emotional development, something that's left out of the classroom, but not in ours. Be sure to subscribe, share, and rate. This is Mentor Select, and this is your host, Derek Phillips.
Okay, parents, you're in for a real treat today. We have Dr. Jenifer Price joining us. She is the founder of UVISEME, and she's joining us from Austin, Texas. So we're happy to have you. How are you, Dr. Price?
Well, thank you so much for asking.
Glad you could join us. And just starting off, I love the name of your company, UVISEME. Tell us more about it.
Yes, well, actually, I just wanted to create a unique name that conveyed it suggested what was available to families. And so really the core of the business is advising families. And so the U actually represents you as the person and also you as in university. So university advising is kind of what it was designed to convey.
Oh, okay, cool. So what is your background?
My background, I actually have a bachelor's and a master's degree from the University of Texas at Austin, Hook 'em Horns.
All right.
So a sociology and social work degree, and I am licensed in social work. I do have a PhD from Old Dominion University in instructional design and technology, which my focus was on online learning at the high school level.
Wow, very cool. So I guess that's a great place to start. Online learning. I know a lot of parents find themselves as they're educators now. They're not just parents. They have to dive in with being online instructors. So how are you seeing with your clients how they're handling that transition?
Honestly, it's been very tough, and I'm sure families can weigh in and probably share the same kind of experience. I am also a parent, and so fortunately, because I've had a background in education and counseling, the transition was a little bit easier for me, but I know for people who may not have that background, it's a whole lot of work. And
definitely.
a steep learning curve and carries a lot of challenges. And having studied online learning at the doctoral level, I knew that there would be a lot of challenges for families with the online learning at the high school and middle school and even elementary levels, just because interaction is important and you really don't want to put your kid in front of the computer all day. And now the older kids do better, but just in general, the engagement is a challenge to have interaction with the teacher and the student. And sometimes that's necessary for motivation purposes. And so that's a challenge with just having students watch a video and not really see their instructor and in terms of just the learning process for teenagers.
Yeah, bring up a really good point. Just, I guess something we may take it for granted with being live in a classroom, just the interaction and that motivation, just that connection, it's important. So once you take that away and now it's just watch this video, do this work, that's not as motivating or exciting.
Nope, and that's really important in that age range. So that's one of the challenges of the way current online learning is delivered.
Right, definitely. So what are some ways that you're helping your clients make that transition? And what are some things that just the parents listening could do to really help their teens just adjust better to this new classroom environment online?
The new normal. I think part of it is to kind of observe and see what's working and what's not working for the teen and communicate that to the teacher, communicate that to the administrators, because they're learning as they go. It's essentially everyone is in this all together. Right. And so, I know that with my son's school, they ask for input and feedback on how the online learning is going. And I know it's easier when they're older to say, oh, go get on the computer and do your assignments, but really to have conversations with them about, how is that learning environment going for you and what's happening in that environment. And so just checking in with them. I mean, it's also tough when they're such social beings and they're by themselves.
Right.
Fortunately, they have cell phones and
yeah,
and
that
they
helps
can
a little
play
bit. FaceTime,
games.
TikTok, that can help a little bit.
All that helps, but still just checking on their emotional well-being too, and their mental health, and all those things are very important too.
Right. And yeah, you bring up a good point as far as just observing, see what's working, what's not working. And that just applies to just about everything in life. Like you said, parents just all starting in the same position unless they're fortunate enough like you to have a doctorate in online learning and education. But most don't. So they're starting from scratch. So just understanding that and know it's a learning curve and really just hanging in there. So hang in there, parents. What have you created any resources to help parents and help teens?
Absolutely. As an educator and counselor, I've worked in school settings ranging from a charter high school running a college and career center to being a classroom teacher in a traditional public school, also being a college counselor and a private high school. And so I saw from working in school settings that one of the challenges of the way the current model operates is that, students are having to make these big life decisions about what do I want to be when I grow up?
Right.
And what college do I want to attend when I leave high school? And it's very difficult. I mean, counselors and educators in general, they're in their line of work because they care,
Right.
because they want to make a difference. But the way the system is set up, it's really hard to really get to know a student and help them make some of those big decisions. And so that's part of why I decided to start a private practice and work with students one-on-one and really delve deep into, what is it that's a good fit for you? What are you good at? What's important to you? What's your personality like? Answer those kinds of questions so that those answers are informing where they choose to apply to college and what majors that they're deciding to pursue. But
Okay.
then what I found in that situation was a little bit limiting. I mean, sure, I've had students who've, received over $100,000 in scholarships, or even the record to date is $720,000 scholarship
Wow.
offers.
That's
And so
impressive.
they're very successful going through the process that I lead them through, but I want to help more people. And so using what I learned, in the school setting and also in my doctoral program in online learning, and just from what I've done in my private practice, I have been able to create something called College Edge. And College Edge is an online advising course for students grades 7th through 12th, and it allows them to go through that advising process, the process that is proven, that has worked for over 20 years, and so so a family can kind of do it themselves in terms of figuring out, having guidance going through the admissions process without having to figure everything out on their own, because there's just so many moving parts, especially with COVID-19 right now.
Yeah.
It's hard to know what to do, when to do it, how to do it. And so there are videos that they can go through. And so aside from the videos, there is a workbook, 45-page resource guide that takes them through that content video and also gives them additional resources, but it also gives the student homework. And that magic piece of called homework is what helps them actually absorb the information, absorb the content, digest that information, and apply it to their own life and help them chip away at that big old beast called the admissions process. And so
Right.
by going through this course, they are actually completing activities that will aid them as they apply for college.
Wow. That's awesome. Definitely, like I said, it can be a mission process. Whew, that can certainly be a big beast. I guess, why is it such a big beast? Why is it so much to navigate?
Great question. And so what I found is, back in the day, when I was going to college, the application process looked a little bit like you have one piece of paper that you fill out front and back.
Right.
And you didn't have to like type it or anything. You could fill it out by hand. But fast forward to today, applications are, numerous pages. I mean, just
Wow.
reporting their extracurricular activities and service alone could be like 3 pages or more. And they have all these essays. And then there are more people going, attending college. And so it's more competitive and the colleges are more selective as a result of it. So you have more complicated process, and it increases the stress for
Okay.
students
Yeah.
and their families, because they're like, this is not the same anymore. There are all these moving parts. I don't even know where to begin.
Yeah. Yeah. See, that can certainly be overwhelming. Just going back to your track record and kind of like your incentive for creating a course, I completely understand that, where, hey, I know I can help people. I have a proven track record and just helping them get so many scholarships. But you can't, as far as the leverage, if you're just in person, then you're limited based on whether the kids at your school or in your private practice. But with an online course, you can reach far and wide, kids all over the world. So that's really cool that you decided to really expand your reach, share the wealth of wisdom that you have. Just from a high level overview, what are some of the things that you found has help students secure just so many scholarships?
Well, I'm glad you bring that up, because I actually have put together a report for parents, 3 ways to recession-proof college costs.
Okay.
And some of the strategies and the way to access that, I'll share that now and then maybe later as well.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's tinyurl.com/Dr. Jen report. And Jen is JEN. So again, tinyurl.com/Dr. Jen report. If you'd like to receive that report, 3 ways to recession-proof college costs. I bring that up because some of the things I'm about to share right now are mentioned in the report.
Okay.
And so I'll give you a high level now, but if you want to receive that free report, it'll delve a little bit deeper. And it's also a way for us to stay in touch.
Fantastic.
So, in terms of helping to save costs, I do want to mention on a personal level that some of the things that I have found to be effective, I actually executed on. I went through these things on my own. So what I mean by that is I'm a first generation college student. I grew up in a single parent home, and my dad actually raised me because my mom passed away when I was young. I was 7 when she passed, and so my dad raised 4 girls.
Wow.
4 girls. And so he had to learn how to cook and clean, and he tried to learn how to comb our hair. I noticed I said he tried.
Good A for effort.
But he always had high standards for us. He always talked about how important education was and going on to college, but we never really talked about how we would pay for it. And so he worked really hard. He had a welding certificate, worked in utilities, but he didn't know the process. And so I basically had to figure it out on my own. And in figuring it out on my own, I realized that I'm going to college, but how am I going to pay for it? And so I got it in my head that I was going to go on a scholarship. And I made the mistake of telling someone that I was going on a scholarship, and they told me that it wasn't possible.
Oh, no, not those words.
Yeah, I was like, that's the wrong thing to tell me. Do not tell me what I cannot do. And so in 7th grade, I started looking for scholarships. And there's a lesson in that. I mean, you have to really start early when you're looking for scholarships. And not necessarily because you're ready to apply right then and there, but what I learned from looking at scholarship applications was, what are they looking for? What kind of test scores, what kind of extracurricular involvement, what kind of service activities, what kind of GPA, what is the ideal scholarship candidate? So I basically studied those applications. I actually wrote letters to them, asked my dad for a stamp, and I wrote letters to them, and then I would look at the applications. And so I learned what I needed to do in high school to be that ideal person to receive those awards. Okay. And I became that person. And so starting early is definitely a strategy I would like to share with families in terms of helping your son or daughter win scholarships. What I mean by that is there's a timing to applying for school, there's also a timing with receiving financial aid and scholarships. And what's tricky about it is if you wait too late, meaning the senior year in high school, when the student is in the middle of applying for college, if you wait till when they're in the middle of applying for college, and then you're also expecting them to apply for scholarships, they're stretched really thin because maybe they're involved in football or cheer or band or other fall sports. And that's just a whole lot of stuff going on at the same time. And so I tell families you want to break up the admissions process, the application process, do a little bit over a longer period of time, meaning like students that are rising seniors. In the summer before their senior year, they can write essays, they can start filling out applications before they even go back to school. And so if they can do a lot of that on the front end of senior year, by the time the large scholarship deadlines arrive, in November, like November 1, the student has space in their schedule. They have time. They're able to apply for those larger sums of money, and they don't miss the deadline. So I would say starting early is definitely a strategy that will help families with winning more money, so they don't miss out on those $20,000 a year scholarships because maybe their son or daughter was really busy with their AP courses, really busy with their sport and serving in the community. That's one of the strategies. And do you want me to continue, or would you like for me to come back to a couple of other strategies?
No, I like that a lot. I had a few questions. Just starting on that first one. I love the fact that you shared your personal story, and this is not just experience you gained from just helping other people, but this is firsthand experience. I feel that's always the best in a lot of situations. So then to think that in 7th grade you were already looking at scholarships, wow, you're really focused. That's really incredible. Now, speaking of you being a first generation college graduate, I guess kind of share with us what were some challenges or maybe some things that you were not prepared for when you transitioned to college.
Well, I grew up in a small town in Texas. And so the University of Texas at Austin, where ultimately, won the free full ride scholarship at the bachelor's and the master's level, it was bigger than my hometown.
Wow.
The university was.
Holy cow. That's a culture shock.
And so at one point, I remember being afraid to go to the other side of the clock tower because I didn't know if I'd find my way back.
I need GPS or something.
The university was just such a large place for me.
Right.
And so I had to get past, just how that was intimidating. And then, of course, the class sizes, you're looking at 400 students in a class, and then, your professor may not know your name. And so you really have to be a go-getter if you choose to go to a big state school.
Right.
And coming from a small town, I really had to just, be bold enough to step outside my comfort zone and be proactive, to go get help when I needed it. Go to the supplemental instruction class to get help from the teaching assistant. I had, go find tutoring in the learning center. I had to be proactive. And so not everyone some people need a little bit more support, and you need to know whether or not your son or daughter is that kid or not. Maybe they are a go-getter. You just let them loose and they'll go figure out what they need and go get it. And others, they need a little bit more support. So you need to know that about your son or daughter before you send them off to a big state school. If they're not a go-getter or extremely proactive, maybe they're a little bit shy. And so maybe a smaller private school can help them kind of come out of their shell. And so being aware of that is very helpful. So those are some of the things that I had to do when I was transitioning. There was also the issue of race as well, and that was something that was very much present. I'm actually Black, and the students at my university, there were only about 3% Black at UT at the time.
Okay.
And so that was another thing. But the environment that I grew up in, I was always the minority. So it wasn't a huge transition for me, but it could be for some students. And just be aware that not everyone is exposed to students from different backgrounds. And so some of the conversations we had in class were interesting. Some were not informed, and some were better informed. And so that was a stretching process as well, which I think, it's an enriching experience overall for people to kind of learn how to step outside their comfort zone and meet people from different backgrounds and grow as a person.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. And I think it's great that you mentioned, like, hey, parents, they have to really take that assessment of their teens and decide, like, okay, kind of help guide them based on what their personality is, whether they're shy or they're go-getters, and just kind of factor that into the college decision. I think, that can be a big factor in how successful they be in college and to make that transition. Because if you're not a go-getter, if you're just not used to being around so many different people on somewhere like UT, that can be overwhelming. Right. So, it definitely takes a level of preparation, certainly. Now, so you share with us the first one about, starting early, preparing early, start searching for those scholarships and applying. What are the other two? High level, we know the parents are going to have to download the report to get all the details, but high level, what's 2 and 3?
Sure. One of the things I like to stress is the importance of a student going into college with somewhat of a plan for career success. And to be more specific, what I mean by that is to have an idea of what majors are, what major is a good fit for them. Because what ends up happening is the students, they go off to college and they change their major 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And what does that do? It prolongs their experience at the university, which,
right.
They're taking electives that may not count towards their degree plan. And then they are graduating with a degree that they're like, oh, I don't know what to do with this degree. And it's like, well, the idea of the degree was for you to use it. Graduate. And they're like, oh, okay. Well,
now you tell me. Yeah.
And so the challenge there is parents are paying even more for college because, they're having to pay for that extra year or year and a half of living expenses and also the extra tuition dollars. And so really having an idea of at least what career neighborhood their son or daughter is in before they head off to college really makes a huge difference in the cost of attendance. And so one of the ways to save on college costs is to contain the costs. Have runaway college costs because they're changing their major over and over again.
Yeah, that's good. Good. Indeed. Yeah, we'll definitely want to invest in something you're going to use, at least guide you in that direction. Just hanging out, taking pottery classes. All right. So what about number 3? What's third on the list for recession proof?
Oh, go ahead. Recession proof. Well, one of the things that I like to talk about is how important it is to match to colleges that make sense for your son or daughter. There are a lot of different things to consider in terms of size and location, and do they have programs of study that are a great fit for your student. I've had students who they apply to schools, or they tell me they want to apply to a school because their BFF is going there. Or maybe their parents and grandparents went there and it's tradition for them to go. And it's like, well, they don't have your major that you talked about. Why would you want to go there? Like, well, everyone in my family went there. And I'm like, that's great. But what if that school's not a good fit for you? I mean, I've literally had conversations with families where the family, they were a Longhorn family. And I basically told them that their child was an Aggie.
Okay, gotcha.
and so that's not what they wanted to hear, but I'm like, but based on
it's in the best interest though of the child.
Absolutely. So you want to come at it from that perspective, and so not only just from a cultural standpoint and the environment, but also even a financial fit, because some families are like, it's too expensive to go to this private school, and maybe their son or daughter really should be in a private school because they're shy, or they just really are unsure about what they want to study, and they need faculty that will be involved more so with their lives to help them make that big decision, to help them look at possibilities. And so it could become more affordable than they might realize if they apply to a private school that gives merit-based money.
Okay. Yeah.
And so another counter to that, sometimes students are even finding that they have trouble getting into our flagship state schools because of the top 10% rule, the top 6%. And so they can go out of state And actually, I've seen students go out of state and pay less than if they were to go to A&M in the state of Texas, being a resident, because of scholarships. And so really, and then there are some colleges that give money based solely on need. And if your family does not qualify for a lot of need-based aid, if your child gets into that Ivy League school that only gives need-based aid, your family's on the hook for that entire price per year.
Yeah,
Families aren't thinking ahead or even examining the financial aid process or awarding policies at the different schools on their child's list. And so I would encourage you to consider that before you allow your child to fall in love with the school that may not be viable financially.
Okay. Yeah, that's great advice. All right. So I'm curious, what's your viewpoint on students starting off at community college and transferring to a 4-year to save money?
It is a great option, especially right now with COVID-19. I mean, I know as a parent, I don't know how I would feel about sending my kid off across the country. You want to keep them nearby, and just from being as a parent, and I know that there are campuses that are opening up, and they will, students are coming to their campus in some parts of the country, and so. But community college, the beauty of that is it's an opportunity for your child to transition. And I know that a lot of times a society says, oh, they're 18, they're an adult.
Right.
They're ready to leave home. Nope.
Sounds good.
Nope, not necessarily. And sometimes our young men need a little bit extra time.
Yeah, we develop a little slower. That's a scientific fact. Our brain's still developing.
So they may not be ready to just go off and have to make all these decisions. And so to keep them home for a year, I mean, obviously it's going to save you money, but it also is a chance to just allow them to have, just to ease into that transition of going on into college. So it helps financially. Also academically, the classes are oftentimes smaller. You're looking at maybe class sizes closer to what they had in high school, as opposed to those classes of 400 and 500. And so they're able to get the basics out of the way and develop, hopefully, a strong foundation in some of those core subject areas so that they're more prepared academically when they transition to a university. Yeah,
I totally agree. I'm a big fan. A young man that I mentor, he went to community college for the first 2 years, got straight A's, and he was just accepted into Texas A&M as a transfer. And that was a dream school. So yeah, that's a lot. And all that was paid for as far as scholarships at community level. So yeah, imagine how much money that saved him in the long run. So,
absolutely. It's a great way to save on the net cost of the education. And a lot of times students can work and pay for their own tuition at the community college level because it's so affordable. Right,
exactly. But I think you brought up a good point in terms, a lot of times I think a big influence can be the parents' ego. Like, hey, I want you to go to this big name school, because I went there, I always dreamed of going there. So that puts additional pressure on their kids.
They want that bumper sticker on the back of their car. I mean, exactly. I'm sorry, we're in Texas. SUV,
right?
Like our SUVs and trucks here. I'm from Texas, so I can joke about that.
Big truck. Yes, indeed. Now, another thing you mentioned earlier that I think is important that parents should apply to that process is just how in your private practice, the starting point is customizing the plan for each student and talking about, okay, what are your interests? What do you want to do? Just really taking time to understand what their desires are. Is that something that you see a lot of parents overlook or don't spend as much time doing?
I don't think it's because parents mean to do that. I think they just don't really know where to begin. And as I talk to parents, they're just like, I don't even know where to begin. And so some colleges are really putting pressure on students to have an idea of their major, because if they don't put down the right major when they apply, they may never get into that program. And so there's a lot more of a need for students to really have more of an idea of what direction they're heading in, depending on where they choose to go to school. They may not get until sophomore or junior year to decide what they want to major in. They need to know coming in, because there's limited spots. in that program. And so with parents, I encourage them to consider career testing for their son or daughter, just because it's a great way to help the student identify a series or a couple of different areas that makes the most sense for their son or daughter. So when they're creating their college list, the college list is comprised of options that have programs that are strong in those areas. And so that shapes their college list. But again, the student is also able to start learning more about those careers. Hopefully they're learning more about those careers through electives while they're still in high school, through job shadowing, through information interviews, through part-time employment, those kinds of experiences to help validate their interest in those areas. And so I highly encourage career testing, because just from my experience, I mean, I've done this for so long that my students are like, they've gone through graduate programs, whether it's law school, medical school. They've started their own businesses. They're married because I've done this for over 20 years.
Wow.
And so I can remember some of those conversations back when they were a junior and we were sitting down, looking at their career assessment results, trying to figure out a plan to get them to where they are now today.
Right.
And so it's so rewarding, just because I can remember just from looking on LinkedIn at where they are now. I'm like, we talked about this like 10 years ago, or 8 years ago, 15 years ago, and look at them now. And they had the luxury that many of their peers didn't have. They had some time to spend in those conversations. And so I find that certain cultures, sometimes they might put a little bit more pressure on students in terms of what their options are for majors. I know certainly when I was growing up, my only options from my family was to be a lawyer or a doctor. And so they really weren't happy when I changed my major to social work. And so there was definitely some pushback when that happened.
Yeah.
So sometimes there are cultural factors as well in terms of what family expectations are. But really, at the end of the day, I want to encourage families to just, to really hear what the child is saying. Because what ends up happening is those students might get that degree that you want, or go to the institution you want. But I've had students come back to me after they've done what their parents want. And they're like, well, what I really want to do is this.
All right, just agree from my parents. But now I'm about to go back and it's me time now. Yeah.
Exactly. And so,
no, fantastic advice. And as we get ready to wrap up this interview, you've given us so much just invaluable advice and guidance. Really appreciate that, Dr. Price. So for the parents just listening, what would be the best way for them to contact you? And then also definitely the way to get the report as well.
Sure. I would just say find me on social media. My handle is at Dr. Jen Price. So at DRJEN Price on Instagram, on Twitter. You can also find me on Facebook. And so I also have a YouTube channel that's just starting to get off the ground.
Okay.
I will encourage you most of all to get that free report. And that's found at tinyurl.com/Dr. Jen Report. And that's DRJEN Report. And so you can learn more about ways to recession-proof college costs, and also stay in touch. Learn more about my online advising course as well.
Fantastically. I certainly highly recommend the parents get their report and learn more about you, just because you have a lot more wealth of knowledge to share, and I can save parents a lot of money. So it's worth the investment, certainly. But again, thanks again, Dr. Price, and certainly continue making that impact that you're making with the youth.
It's a joy. It's such a privilege just to be able to step into their life for a season and help them come up with that plan for career success, and to see them execute on it. I mean, there's nothing like that feeling, to see them arrive at their dream.
And priceless.
You've been listening to Mentor Select. Mentor Select. Parenting teens to be successful adults. Hosted by Darrich Phillips. Raising teenagers is hard. Understatement of the century. We get it. That's why Derrich interviews leading experts that work with teens, educators, counselors, mentors, and authors to give you practical tips, strategies, and resources that you can incorporate immediately to better connect and understand your teen. That's why we do the show. Be sure to share Mentor Select with other parents of teens. Follow us on social media at Mentor Select to stay up to date on the latest tips, strategies, and resources for parenting teens. Send your questions and comments to derrich@mentorselect.com. Tune in every Wednesday for new episodes. Till next time, this is Mentor Select.